I don't know. I mean, I just sort of looked at Guy like he was a child a little bit. I mean, he was kind of he really is technically sort of 4 years old. So I thought of him in that regard. And, there's so many movies that I watched from when I was a kid to now that informed how to play this role. I mean, Being There is one of them, which is a Peter Sellers movie. Buddy the Elf from Elf with Will Ferrell. I mean, that's a big one. So I just sort of thought of Guy as a bit of an innocent, a child sort of looking at everything in naive ways. Oh, no, those were all motion capture. So I played them and then we turned them into CGI characters. So yeah, it was all mapping my face and, all that sort of techno jargon to make it all look fairly right on,
Definitely. I think that was a huge thing that was really important to me was that, we had to believe that this avatar was created by Millie. It wasn't to be, a man's ideal of what, a fantasy of what this woman should look like. So, a huge thing for me was practicality. A costume had to be practical. And I know that we kind of took influence from Bonnie and Clyde, and there was a real kind of punk element. And there is definitely a strength to her costume. And I think there's something interesting, about this kind of sense of wish fulfillment. Like, if we could project ourselves in a certain light, how would we do that? So yeah, it was really important that there was always an essence of Millie through Molotov.
Well, Dude is one of my favorite characters that I've ever got to play because he's kind of he has sort of like half a brain, but he's this huge, imposing 6'7" guy who's all muscle and tan and teeth and hair. But most of the performance of the face was put on afterwards. So I did that in a special effects thing called the Egg. Which is, it maps your face and every different facial expression and that sort of thing. But I would also play it on the day. I mean, I would shoot the scenes as me, as Guy, and then I would also shoot the scenes as Dude. But then when we turn the camera around, we would use the body double, who's the gentleman named Aaron Reed, who's a very big, looks like that. And then later on, we would change his face to my face. Well, I mean, it's the movie's a bit of a challenge because this one is you have a character who really doesn't want to fight anyone, but he ends up having to kind of fight back, and I think that's the greatest reason to fight. Is if you're trying to find a peaceful means that doesn't work, and then you resort to the next thing, which is regrettably is some violence. So, he's trying to kind of fight back, but without doing it the way they do. He's trying to do it in his own way. So the movie, it was, that was always the challenge of making this movie. It's got to be a big, huge action, adventure, comedy sort of spectacle. But the violence is generally the people around me more so than my character. And then as the movie marches on, by the sort of midway point, I'm fighting back with everybody else because it's the only way forward. So, but it was fun. I mean, and it's also lovely because it's not the real world, so you can kind of get away with more and do more than you would if you were, depicting a real life scenario or a real life situation. It would be a little bit different, I think, if we had to do that. Oh, well, we wanted to make him look like someone who just blends into the background. So the sort of blue shirt and the khakis, the sort of beige pants were, all part of that system. You wanted him, and that we keep him in that color palette for the whole movie. Even when he changes shirts, it's still the same color, and that we wanted to use that to represent how stuck he is. He's stuck in this world. He's stuck in this kind of, this scenario, which he can only change a little bit. He can only change so much. So that was kind of the point of that. The wardrobe is really just to tell the story that this guy is a background character. He's not a main character. He's always going to be in the background, and if he wants to get out of the background, he's going to have to start a revolution.
Gosh, it was so long ago that I can't remember what we shot first. But I met Ryan initially for my audition. I flew to New York and I auditioned with Ryan and Sean. And he was so welcoming, you know, and so fun. Like, what you see is definitely what you get with Ryan. And I think probably what I learned from him the most was just to be really free in your choices, you know, when you're on set. He likes to swap and change things a lot. Like, if something isn't working, he will have 5 alt lines ready to go and each one of them lands. So I think that's probably what I learned from Ryan through filming.
I don't know. I think comedy's a great way to tell stories. I mean, when you're filtering stories through or messaging through comedy, it's more easily digested. It's palatable for audiences. You know, I've always expressed my hurt or my anxiety in life through comedy or laughing at myself or self-deprecation. So I don't know, I think it's like the most universal way to communicate. I think it's a really beautiful way to communicate and a hard way to communicate. Comedy's not easy. You know, I don't think if people think it's sort of easy when you're funny in a movie or something like that, but I think it's actually really quite a challenge.
Well, I know what I learned from Millie, which was to trust your gut, I think. I think Millie has a really strong sense of who she is and what she deserves, which I think is really inspiring. I think, you know, as a society, as humans, we kind of have a hard time of kind of claiming our power in that way, of if we need something or if we know something is wrong. So I think that's what we could take away from Millie. Self-belief.
But what kind of habit did I personally change?
Yeah.
I found that like halfway through the pandemic and the lockdowns, I started to just be on my phone all the time. So I made a commitment to not be on my phone as much. I would still go on my phone, but I would make time to go on my phone as opposed to just making time to not be on my phone. So it was, I found that I was a lot happier when I would get off my phone.
Hi.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it. Take care.